So, when I asked Tammy yesterday because it takes me a long time to wrap my head around one concept. And it was the issue of the harm. When you get to freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of creating. And I had to break it down for myself. So I'm going to take you through my process. So I'm not giving a talk, I'm not reading a speech, it's not a paper. I'm taking you through my process of understanding what I have been through because of my big mouth and my big voice. And when I say voice, I'm talking about the art that speaks. Because sometimes when we say voice, we think voice as in the physical voice. But the art also speaks. The drawings speak, the dance speaks. So that voice, it's that big voice that can be sometimes intimidating to those who don't want to hear it. So I looked at it from a perspective of freedom of speech that is specific to the spoken word. And then the freedom of expression that is broader and it is inclusive of all forms of expression. And then the freedom to create art. That is an absolute freedom. It doesn't matter who is offended by it. It doesn't stop. Because nobody can stop your ability to create. And the truth of the matter is that freedom of speech is also an absolute right. It just depends where. The only time your speech is not free is when you want to bring it into a space where it's not welcome. So historically, these freedoms were only available to the elite and ruling classes. If you were not a ruling class or an elite, these freedoms were not for you because you were not allowed into certain spaces where you would say things or do things or express things that might essentially touch a nerve. So there is a lot of good in it because it forces you to introspect and say, why do I want to say this in other people's spaces? Because I could say these things in my place where nobody will try and stop me from saying them. I had a conversation the other day with someone who was saying, so a couple of weeks ago, they unveiled the Wall of Fame at the Rodipo Theatre. And I had the privilege of being one of the people to receive a star. Now, a very close friend of mine, a white woman, said, there's just too many white people on the Wall of Fame, not enough people like you. And I said to her, I find that interesting that you would say that because to me, this is the space of white people.
Yes.
Why do we want to be included in the spaces of white people? Why haven't we created our own spaces in 30 years plus? And then we want to fight to be in their schools. We want to fight to be in their universities. In 30 years plus, all we have done is we are famous worldwide for corruption and killing each other for money that doesn't belong to us, and yet we haven't built the things that we fight white people for. Yes, they have a privilege of over 200 years. But when we got our freedom, what have we done with it in 30 years? I cannot, for any good reason, find it within me to go and fight with Cape Town Opera to give me a role. But I will fight with this Department of Sports and Arts and Culture and the NAC to give me money to create operas for people like me. And that is why I fight. And that is why I demand my freedom to say what is needful to say, because I feel that for me to be able to make a change, I have to make a change that is lasting for people like me so that I don't fight people who are not like me for their spaces that make me feel that I don't have freedom. Because that is what it is. And the systemic exclusion continues because, think about it rationally. When we graduated, you only needed to have a bachelor's to qualify for a job. When black people came into this space, we started saying, because I have an honors, if you don't have an honors, I'm going to get you out of this space by demanding that now the standard is that we should have an honors. Isn't it?
Yeah, true.
And then when black people realized you need an honors, and they started learning more, and they got their honors, and then they start saying you need a master's. And then black people study some more, and they get their masters. Now we're saying PhDs, right? Yes. Because it doesn't matter how much freedom you can demand. There will always be somebody who will be uncomfortable with your ability to express yourself. Hence the issue about it's the expression. Because that's a broader concept than just the spoken word. I go into spaces, put myself in danger, knowing very well that nothing will happen to me. I know. I said it when I went there. I remember Zwaki said, do you know what would make this a proper revolution if somebody dies? I said, nobody's dying on my watch. Nobody. I'm not there for somebody to die. I'm there for change. Because that is what your freedoms give you, the power to change. You know? So if your freedoms are not giving you the power to change, then why do you want them? Is it just so that you can say, I have it? And then what? If our children are still sitting there 30 years from now, like we are sitting here 30 years later, after our elders didn't change things. Tammy was telling a story the other day. We did a workshop in Free State, and he was telling the people in Free State that the artists that we respected us when we were growing up, when they were asked who they wanted to be their Minister of Arts and Culture, this is the freedom of speech that they had. Remember, when the new dispensation came into play, they were given the freedom to express their vision. So we can't now sit here and say, oh no, we didn't have the freedom to express who we want. Today we are sitting here trying to fix the issue of a Minister of Arts and Culture who has nothing to do with the arts because the people we respected had the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression, and they didn't know what to do with it. So why do you want the freedoms? If it's not for change. Do you know what their response was when they were asked who they wanted to be the minister, or any of them, would they be willing to take the responsibility of building this department so that it looks like them? And I'm not talking just young graduates who are coming out of university with fresh ideas and all of that. I'm talking people who have had global success. And they said, no, we want to gig. Their freedom of speech made them ask for alms. If you want to gig, you are asking for charity because a gig will end. But if you ask for the position of a minister, you are asking for the ability to determine what happens for future. So I found myself sitting there looking at the people I've respected all my life. Because these are not people I was watching on TV. These are people I literally grew up with at home, in the house. Those are my family, those are my people. You know, those are not people that I look at and like, oh, give me a photograph. Those are the people you sit there and they say, please make me a cup of tea. Now, 30 plus years later, I still have to go and shut down a building for 60 days because they failed to put mechanisms in place that would ensure that a black child is not excluded perpetually. So what are these freedoms for? But here's the harm. This is why I said I had to go back and say the harm. Here's the harm. I found myself being censored. I found myself being threatened. I found myself anything you can think of under the sun. Imagine the shock of every artist when they saw me undressed in front of the Department of Arts and Culture. People thought I was protesting because, you know, artists, they will take off their things and show their brands. I wasn't. I was undressed by the police because I dared to express my freedom of expression, my freedom of speech. The one thing they couldn't take away from me was my freedom to create. I keep creating non-stop because that's what I am. Not who I am, what I am. I'm a creative. And in my creativity, there's art. In my creativity, there's speech. In my creativity, there's all kinds of things. I create. Even the cooking in my kitchen, I'm a creative. Even the way I put myself together, I'm a creative. I want to see something beautiful. So I put it together in such a way that says, I am a creative. So my freedom to create is absolute. But there has been a lot of harm in how the freedom of expression and the freedom of speech have been used before, because there was no deliberateness in it. So that's why then the question comes up as to whether it's a good thing or it's a harmful thing, because there is an issue of how we deliberate with the freedoms we demand. Thank you.
Life of an artist, bacho spices, glorifying drugs as a stage fright cure. You can try this just when you're about to grab your chance of staging. Excitement, you can't think out this industry, or should I say this killer dream, cause you will swear that from the start it was designed to kill artists. Bangakulwela when days are bright, as a human being on Instagram, too much pressure, unrealistic expectations. Whoever said that is the perfect is with us, wethembekile, singiza wethembekile, remedies within us, as ikhwemba sibhebhekile.